morning. Thank you so very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Lubna, and thank you to GatherVerse.
Well.
Hello, ladies.
Hello.
I'm going to be your moderator for the day, for the moments that we get to spend together. And I want to say we're gonna go pretty fast and furious. We have a lot of speakers here today. We have a lot of ground to cover, and we're on day 3 of the SHE Summit. It's our second annual summit, and we're here to make an impact and really educate the world and come together in regards to the funding gap that we're experiencing in today's world, especially in regards to technology startups, and women in particular. So I'm super glad that you all showed up, and you're ready to represent here today. Let's finish this summit out strong, and let's have some real ground gained and hopefully some real networking done. So the first question that I have is, the first question is, what strategies have you found effective in securing investment as a woman entrepreneur? And I think I want to go with Diane on this one. Diane, tell me what your experience has been like in this.
Yes, so I've learned that knowledge is your best friend. We're not able just to enter a room and have an idea and people be like, oh, that's amazing, let's invest in you. We actually have to prove, in my experience, I actually had to prove that I belong there, that I knew what I was talking about. Even if people knew who I was, that just got me through the door. But it wasn't until I was given the opportunity to share and lead the discussion and showcase my vision and my strategies, then and only then was it like, oh, okay, so she knows what she's talking about. Even when they came at me with odd-end questions, okay, well, what if this happens and half of the earth disappears? How are you going to solve this problem in your business? Just way out there questions. But having that knowledge and back end, that actually helped me earn their trust, earn their valuation that, okay, this is something we can put our money and financial support into. So knowledge has been my best friend in securing.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I'm sure that that's helpful to all of us across the board. So I think we're ready for the next question. How do you think the funding landscape for women entrepreneurs has evolved in the recent years? And Kelsey, I'll go to you with this one.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So technically, I own a 501c3 nonprofit. It might be a little bit different, called GG Women Professionals. So it's more towards the game industry, not particularly dedicated in just tech. But from what I found, since I'm still in the beginning stages, funding is going to be a little bit difficult. I would say rolling the ball. I have to kind of push a lot more, be very patient. So normally with nonprofits, I think so far with funding in the game industry, what I've noticed personally is there was one group called Women in Games International Wiki, and they are dedicated to also help women more international. And what I noticed for that nonprofit is video game companies in particular would like to help women more in the past few years, and also people of color. So some nonprofits towards game industries are seeing big investments. Wiki did get over $1 million a couple of years ago, and I thought that was really fascinating.
Yeah.
But I just think whether women or not, it's still very difficult. So I would just think if you're going to keep funding, you just have to be very consistent with it. And it's okay if you're not going to, get it right the first time. So for what I can see, I think people are more open to funding women. It's been very big. I've seen it in XR and towards the metaverse areas, which is great. And video games have also been there as well. And hopefully in a couple of years or even sooner, when my nonprofit is getting a little more foundation, people keep knowing the name, the funding is going to get a little bit easier. So I hope that answered your question.
It did. Thank you for that. I want to touch on this a little bit because I think I can share some knowledge perhaps with some of you quickly. And that is that I have been talking to people about funding recently. And a couple of tips that they gave to me is they said that organizations that are already up and operational, improving themselves to be operational, are actually a lot more highly apt to be funded during this time. And, pitch decks become really important. And so really making sure that you have something that's professional, that's sharp, that's going to answer most of the funders' questions is also super helpful on the back end for any people who are seeking funding. So I just want to drop that really quick to the group. And I think we're going to go on to our next question. What role do networks and mentorships play in overcoming the funding challenge? Ooh, I love this one. Sorsha, I'm going to go with you on this one. So what role?
Hi, Lida. Thanks so much for the question, and great to see so many amazing ladies on this panel. Special hi to Diane and Katerina. What role do networks and mentorship play in overcoming funding challenges? Absolutely imperative, because as Diane said earlier, it's networks. And if you don't have somebody to ask a question and ask support, you're not going to achieve results, because none of us can do this alone. Personally, I'm involved with multiple networks of networks. Can I just check that my sound is okay? Because when I was listening to the last couple of speakers, it was jumping in and out. Yeah, it's clear. That's great. I'll continue. I'm involved with multiple women's groups, including the Women in Immersive Technology in Europe as ambassador for Ireland, the Association of Women in Crypto, which is a global group of multiple ambassadors per country all across the world, led by the amazing Amanda Wick, and Block W in Ireland, Blockchain for Women. So just 3 of the industry groups I'm involved in, and then also plugged in and steering committee memberships to Blockchain Ireland and others, more diverse groups, not just female focused. I'm also chair of the Impact Innovation Foundation, working closely with Diane since the last quarter of last year. And I find that without having somebody to call upon with a difficult question, or just to run past, what's happening in the market out there, rather than just reading what's on PitchBook, what's on Crunchbase about the funding landscape, where is the best place to raise funds, boots on the ground, dealing with the startups that I work with. The VC landscape in Europe and the USA has been really, really difficult, and angel investors have been heaven sent. So big shout out to any angel investor out there, and they're huge networks of networks also.
Yeah. So any advice that you would give? I heard all the associations that you're a part of and organizations. Is there any other suggestions that you would make in this arena, aside from organizations and associations, for networking and really being able to seek those angel investors in particular?
Advice, word of mouth, the people that you know, like Katerina here on the panel has an incredible network and huge diverse experience with impact and with women, and has been amazing support to me as well. So just the women around this table, let alone through the rest of the GatherVerse, our web of women is phenomenal. But also there's so much that we need to do in terms of policy for founders and also for funders. We all talk a lot about female founders, but we don't often look at the struggle that female funders also have. And that's policy writing them out of being able to participate in the angel investment economy, like in the UK in the last few days. Legislation has been marked to reduce angel investor status from £100,000 to £170,000 annual earnings, which excludes a huge amount of the female investment pool in the UK alone. And perhaps that's something that may be seen in other countries. And what needs to happen with these women's groups that we have is that we need to be advisors to policy writers to see what is the impact of a new policy, particularly financial, to women who are perceived as new participants in the investment economy. We're still building and writing the rules for VC for women, and maternity is a huge part of that as well.
Great, thank you. Okay, next question. How do you prepare to pitch to investors, especially in a male-dominated venture capital environment? I love this one. Katarina.
This is a really interesting question. Thanks, Alida. How to prepare, but this depends of so many things. As Diane mentioned, you need to have a knowledge, which is number one thing. With that knowledge, you need to build a network, as Sorge mentioned, but then build the assets of your organization on the project that you're building. And so to quantify the impact of that specific project when you build the assets, this is where your network helps. This is where your mentor helps, and people who are working together with you, so you can actually emphasize that unique perspective. When female founders are building the project and building the company, they actually need the full support and guidance as well. And so through that, we actually need to demonstrate that strong leadership, because there's a lot of times that there's an amazing business idea, amazing startup, but with a lack of that confidence and sometimes authenticity as well, we actually lose the opportunity to raise the funds or to pitch to a group of investors who would, in a way, get a good return on the investment, but they would oversee that opportunity. And so there's a lot of different advices that you will get from different people, but I think what's really important is to step up with that knowledge and that confidence based on the business model and based on the business idea that the female founders are building.
I agree. I also would add to that, it's about knowing your demographic and knowing the people that you're about ready to walk into the room and give your pitch to, right? And establishing a trust and some sort of a connection with each and every single one of them individually as individuals before you even step into the room, I think is always really good. Okay, next question. Can you discuss a time when you had to pivot your strategy to secure funding? Maria, tell me about this one.
Well, I can tell you that I didn't, and I'm going to explain you why. But first of all, I just want to say that I'm so excited to be here with you, with this amazing woman, and just want to express my appreciation to Christopher and also GatherVerse for this very important event. I actually had a situation. So this question is interesting for me to answer, because I had a situation with an investor because when we start a project or a company, we were more focused on a specific segment or targeting a specific segment. Targeting a specific segment, but sometimes after having conversations with investors, they want us to pivot, right? But I had a situation where the investor want us to do that, and we weren't ready because it would compromise our goals and our visions. So we didn't got the funding, which was very upsetting. But at the same time, investing and having a relationship with an investor, it's almost like a marriage, right? So we cannot just think about the money. We need to think about what happens after a while. And we were not feeling that that investor was aligned with our company's vision. So we didn't pivot. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I love that. I love that response and that answer. And I'm going to hold on this one. And I'm also going to toss the same question over to Divya.
Hi, everybody. And I actually, when you asked the question, I was like, oh, I wish I had gotten that question.
Okay.
We did launch our inter-office communication product in 2019, December of 2019, and all offices shut down in 2020, right? Feb of 2020. So we were like, oh, okay, we cannot work on this anymore. Who am I going to sell inter-office communication products to if there's no offices open, right? And so we had to kind of work on changing our strategy from, inter-office communication to AI-based medical charting. And we also started working on something that we can work remotely, right? And sustain the company so that we can come back to it and raise the money for the things that we wanted to raise the money for, right? Because there was no way you could have worked on a hardware technology when, people were working remotely, right? So we had to kind of pivot in that manner and kind of including AI-based medical charting into, our pitch deck. And that has helped us get more, investors talk to us than just, when you're trying to say, hey, I have so many patents and, I'm trying to do this, which will really help people, rather than that. If I say, oh, it's an AI-based medical charting and it'll save you 80% of a doctor's time, right? Then people are more interested because it's all about the catchphrase, right? It's IoT or AI or, something else. And people are more attracted to that. But yeah, we had to pivot that way in order to kind of sustain the company and kind of keep moving so that we could get back to our original product with all the, patents that we had to, get the funding for it later. So I think that's what we did.
Okay. I think that like just sharing those is almost like, our personal experience and our stories in this arena is super duper helpful for all of us, but all of the people who are going to be watching and seeking this information as well. And I'm just going to ask one more person. I'm going to say, Diane, is this something that you've encountered?
I did, but mine was more so, it wasn't so much a tech company, but a consulting company. So that is not very appealing to investors. And I needed funding last year to jumpstart things. So I did a pivot and did research with the Small Business Administration, the SBA, and started looking into their business loans and their 7A loans that have capped out on interest rate and limited fees attached onto it. And that was the way I was able to secure a loan for funding to kind of jumpstart things and get things moving last year. So that was a time where I had to pivot the type of funding I was looking for to actually get where I needed to go.
Awesome. Thank you for that share. And I think that that's also hugely inspiring for, again, other people to know that that's another, don't forget about the SBA, right? And I'm sure that there's organizations like that globally as well. Next question. What changes would you like to see in the investment community to bridge the funding gap for women? So Kelsey, what do you think on this one?
So someone who's at the very beginning of the stages of a startup, I think what my experience is, if your name isn't well known yet or it's not big enough, it's, in my experience, it's been a little bit harder to get people on board because they don't know who you are or they don't know the actual startup, what the nonprofit is. So I think if you want to see change, sometimes you have to start at your little area, to start more local. Because yes, you have big companies, you have big nonprofits and then tech companies or games that are fantastic, are doing really well, but they had to start small. So if people do want to see something go out there, so for instance, with our mission at GG Women Professionals, it's to help raise the voices and share the stories of women in the game industry. But to do that, sometimes people just have to remember that, everyone has to start somewhere. People like Wiggy, Diane, Sorsha, Maria, you all had to start off in the very beginning, and it must have been very difficult. But over time, when people started to realize your mission, the way how you're consistent with it, and the way you go for it, funding probably got a little bit easier. And just like Diane said, I'm going to go off a little bit of her, knowledge is a big one. So that's one thing I noticed. People were definitely listening more and a little bit more willing to give more funding once they know, oh, she does know what she's talking about. She does have a mission and a goal where to go. And I guess in my experience, the biggest thing is if they don't know you well enough, it could be hard to get funding in the beginning. But the more consistent I am, the more you kind of share out your names and shout them out, people are going to start to listen. And the more they listen, that role is going to keep going faster and faster until it gets bigger. But that's the best I could answer on that one. I would hope someone can jump in and give maybe where they are in their few years ahead. But
well, I would also love you to just share your mission. So what is your mission, Kelsey?
Well, okay. Well, so GGWIN Professional is a 501c3 nonprofit. You have to be very patient to make a nonprofit. It took a couple of years just to get state and federal exempt for that. So if anyone starts one, please be patient. But that's, I think the difference is to go for a nonprofit, you have to dedicate your time. And as all of you know, time is money. And I'm not getting paid at the moment for it, but that's okay because I volunteer because I believe in this mission that as it's supposed to be, I want to help women in the game industry. That's the biggest goal. I want to tell their stories. I want to make sure they're heard. And I want to dive into the areas that people don't talk about, which would be, people might hear a producer or designers with women, but that's great. What about the audio designers? What about those that might be in UI UX? What about those that are now branching into XR and the metaverse in the game subgenres? So I just want to reach the voices for those that don't really get a chance to put on their platform. So being on the GatherVerse, for instance, is a huge change because the GatherVerse is an ally for what I believe it is, and is given opportunity for all of us to talk our case. But I'm very excited. So in the long run, it's just to help raise the voices of women in the game industry. That is our goal.
Okay, thank you for sharing. And Sorsha, I know that you wanted to jump in on this one, so.
I did. Thank you so much for listening, and just so great to hear Kelsey's passion there, and also the humbleness of being so open about volunteering here, because we're all doing so much volunteer work here, and it's something we don't talk about enough, those very valuable hours that we're contributing. And even on a meeting with Diane a couple of weeks ago, I said, I love my volunteer work more than the day job. Why can't that flip over to the other side? But something that I would love to see, and I think that many more women here in the audience will also agree with this, that we'd love to see more female investors. We're only in single or very low double-digit percentage of women investors. And if we're not investing in each other, then now my 2-year-old investor, my biggest support, has just entered the room, so apologies. Thanks. Yeah, we definitely need more female funders, check writers, and something that we need to start seeing ourselves as our founders, but also future investors, so that we're readying ourselves for the money that we earn on exit, or as we accumulate it, we can go in at syndicates, and we can start to change the funding landscape together by being investors in each other's projects. It's something that syndicates do in angel investment, and in the VC world. We have to write our own careers into this industry. If the people aren't there for us to see us, we have to do it for ourselves.
Thank you. Okay, next question. How do you balance the need for funding with maintaining your startup's vision and values? This is a great one. We kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. So Maria, I know that you've already kind of spoken to this one a little bit. So Katerina, tell me about this one for you.
Well, this is an interesting question. The previous was interesting as well. And I know that if you would give us an opportunity, I think all of us would love to have a discussion about every question that comes up, because it's really important. Sure. And for the previous one, I agree with Kelsey and Sorsha as well. What I would like to add is that we need to change the way for the investment opportunities, how they are evaluated, because they're evaluated in a way that female do not have an impact in that. And this is also related how do you balance the need for funding when you maintain your startup, the vision, the values, your strategy, your operations, and everything. So many times the evaluation of the potential investments of the businesses are based on what investors or the VC sees as an opportunity. And so you can see a diverse investments valuated in a different way, where the founder is not able to have a say, because if it's a good opportunity, and it's usually in these situations, the female founders are not part of the discussion. That's the biggest challenge. And so the startups would be evaluated in a way that it's a good opportunity for a VC without females to invest and have a good return on the investment. And what we would like to see really change in a way how the investment opportunities are evaluated, and also the inclusion of female VCs, female investors, and female angel investors as well. And so balancing the funding is really, everybody has to pivot in one way or another. There is no startup, and I work with over 5,000 startups. There is no way that you can go ahead and secure the funding without pivoting a little bit. But now what's really important is that do you want to stick to your vision and values and not pivot? And what Maria said, sometimes we do not accept the funding that does not align with our mission and vision, because then what's the purpose of starting the whole idea and the business? But then it also comes to the operations as well. Do you have a big board who's part of the decision? And then, the values, the cultural values, the purpose of the whole business or the organization, if it's a non-for-profit. There's a lot of factors that impact this. I think this is a great questions for a group discussion where we can really elaborate what's the best way how to approach this.
Does anybody else?
Yeah,
does anybody else want to add? Does anybody else want to add? Okay, next question. What advice would you give women entrepreneurs starting their career in the modern era of AI? And I'll leave it open for them based off of Katarina's suggestion. So anybody who wants to jump in, Divya, I would imagine you have good advice on this, but does anybody want to roll?
So basically, AI is nothing new, right? This is not the first time people are going crazy for AI. This has happened at many times in the past, right? Where they say, oh, AI, we're going to do this. And then, it calms down, and then the AI hype comes up again, right? And goes down. People still don't know if true AI or the intelligent AI can be achieved, right? But a lot of what we are seeing now is natural language processing, right? And most people, if they want to get into a career with AI, there are a ton of courses about it taught by various universities, and they're on Coursera. They're on, if you have LinkedIn Premium, they have a lot of, courses there as well. And, you can just get started to understand what AI is and how the AI modeling is helping with, when you enter something in ChatGPT, how is that working, right? That kind of stuff. But I think OpenAI, if you can get into the company, that's great, right? But at the end of the day, AI is about, okay, nobody has done anything significantly at the highest level of AI. I think we are still at the very lower level of AIs, right? Just the language processing and stuff like that. So there are a lot of courses to learn all this, right? It has a bunch of math and, so people who are trying to get into AI, I think they need to brush up on their math skills as well to get there. So,
thank you. Anybody else want to add?
I can go. So as Divya was saying, I agree totally. We're still grasping what is AI. I'm an engineer, and I had the opportunity to study AI in college before this big buzz. And yeah, it's very technical. You can go very deep on it, and I think we didn't reach it yet. So there's a big opportunity, not only for women, but for entrepreneurs for starting out and really develop interesting projects and products. But I would say that if women are already entrepreneurs in this area, I would say that you need to have the confidence when you go to meetings, either with investors or other kind of meetings. So you need to, I think it helps to really know the product. So for me, it helps because I have the technical background and I can say, look, I know the product inside out. So there's no questions you can make that I won't be able to answer, right? Because I've built this. So that helps a lot. And then I would say that it's also crucial for you to surround yourself with people that can help you, even if there are mentors or like-minded people or other entrepreneurs. If they're women, better, right? Because we need to have examples of people that already at least try to do what we're trying to do. And I believe that surrounding ourselves with these kinds of people that can uplift us, and I think that helps a lot.
Thank you. Anybody else? Kelsey?
I think, so I personally do use a little bit of AI to help me out. So I use Google Bard and ChatGPT. And that actually use it for social media posts. So I think towards this question, even I'm a little skeptical with AI. I think people should be a little bit wary when there is new technology, because with new technology, as we've seen in the game industry, some people are afraid of losing their jobs, such as artists. That's a big one that's going on. You can even say certain designers are a little fearful of it. But just as Maria and Divya has kind of mentioned, and this will also answer Sarah's B's question in the comments, is the more research you put into it, the stronger you are, then you're going to understand how AI will assist you. And that's what I use AI for. It might be simple, but all our social media posts, we don't have a social media manager. And again, time is money and we need to be quick with it. Google Bard has been my best friend when I have to make certain emails and do social media posts. And the VP, Sasha Mensakova, for GG Women Professionals, she also uses ChatGPT to create pictures for some of our events and also for media and also for her emails. So I find it very beneficial that going forward as entrepreneurs, especially in a startup, AI, I think, can be a tool to assist you. And if used properly and ethically, it can help you in the long run. So that's just my 2 cents on it. Thank you.
I agree wholeheartedly. I've used it for all of those same things as well, and it's hugely beneficial. Anybody else want to add?
Yes, 2 little points I want to put on there is being resilient and adaptable, whether you're entering in your career field or in entrepreneurship. It's this is an area that's fast and evolving, always changing. Be resilient, especially with looking at all the layoffs that are going on. Make sure you have something to fall back on. If you have an interest, maybe learn a second one so you have 2 different routes to go if something needs to pivot. And then be able to learn from failures. Don't just think, oh, I didn't make it, I'm not going to do it again. No, what did you learn from that? What experience did you gather? What can you help pass along to someone else to say, okay, don't do that, I did that and it didn't work. And just touching upon that, when you make it to your level of success, pay it forward, bring somebody else along. Get on platforms like this, meet up with GatherVerse and actually speak, showcase what you've learned, what you've done, so that others can see, okay, she's gone through it, they've made it, I can do it. So once you make it, make sure to turn around and pay it forward.
Yes, love that. Thank you. Are we ready for the next question, ladies? Okay. What sectors of technology are women needed in the most? Which sectors? Oh, how are we going to balance the playing field, ladies? I can't wait to hear the answers to this one. It's free for all. Let's go.
Everything, I think, is the simplest answer.
You think what is the simplest?
Agreed.
Everything.
I agree with that.
And I used to work at Intel, and the ratio of men to women is 10:1. So it's really hard when you have to navigate something like that, even though it's not your fault, right? And even though you shouldn't have to do it. But I think in every technology sector, it's very hard to find, technical women. There's a lot of other like HR and, other people, but technical women is very few. The ratio is very bad. So I think just in general, so when I was doing my master's, there was this, like a non-volunteer stuff that we did where we used to go to schools and we used to encourage girls to actually do technology stuff, right? We used to help them build robots, do small coding and things like that. And it's amazing how many girls think they're not smart enough to do it. So our goal was to tell them, hey, you are smart enough and you can do this, and teach them stuff, right? So I think we need to start from there if we have to balance that out.
So I think this is also a good message when we talked about, Diane, you mentioned, pivoting in regards to, what might be coming for people and learning the new skills. And so this might be like a big push to encourage women, hey, get in here, get in this arena and get in this field, right? This field is going to be booming, right? Like it's not slowing down, it's only speeding up. So jump in on this one and help each other out. It sounds like there's a world of need across all positions in this arena. Is that correct?
Yes, and I would say yes and no. We would also need to be mindful of these huge tech companies that are doing all these layoffs. So we can say, yes, across the board, we need women in all tech positions. But I wouldn't recommend a woman to go get a job go learn a certain tech skill if they just laid off 30,000 people. There's not a need for that position. So also looking at that landscape of, okay, what positions like sustainable technology in the environment, that's hiking up. Artificial intelligence and machine learning, that's hiking up. And then also because we've had this awareness to build up, we need funds for women. We need investors that are women. Now that we have that, we don't have the pool of startups that have been launched by women to meet the need that we've been requesting. And so now going to young women at a young age to say, okay, STEM is great, but don't just be career workers in STEM. You can also be the innovators and the developers of STEM. And actually, so one of the things we're doing at Impact Innovation Foundation, yes, we're mentoring and building up startups, but we're also working with our education arm to go into the K through 12 schools to say, you guys can actually be the creators and the innovators. So those would be the top 3 areas I would say that really need that boost to go in rather than just a blanketed across the board.
Education, I love it. I think definitely funneling it into those channels. But I also like your shout out. So it can also be industry specific, right? With the layoffs that are taking place right now. So really paying attention to that. And does anybody else want to add on this one? Kelsey,
I think, sorry.
You're fine. You guys go. I'm here for you.
I'm just, so since I'm more a little bit in the games industry, and we too are going to want to do a summit in a few months. And what I was looking into when I'm trying to find speakers is who are those that are less heard of. I kind of brought up audio engineers. So in the game industry, more women, and probably also in other tech industries, I noticed women are going to go more towards production and project management roles. They don't really go towards coding or something that I guess can be a little bit more male dominated. It can be quite intimidating, especially if you're the only one in that class or only one in that sector. But from what I can tell in the game industry, there's not many women that are in audio, which is pretty big. With AI kind of rising, I do see a little bit more women going in that area. I would also say probably a little bit more on XR UI, because a lot of women go towards art and design areas. They're quite creative that way. But just kind of what Diane was saying and the others were saying, it's almost like a confidence boost to go, whether it's young girls go into their classroom and talking to them, to college students, because everyone feels a little bit of imposter syndrome. But the reality is you can do it. So if, you just kind of have to have a goal and think about it. But just like Divya said, I think every sector needs to have women in it. I think not just only that, but women who want to be in there, because I don't I don't think people should push someone to go into something. So for instance, I actually know how to code, and it's fine, but I don't have this huge passion where I got to code all the time. I'm going to do this and that and coding in C++, C#, and JavaScript, and you name all the scripting languages and object-oriented. And that's okay. So if you want to go in STEM areas in tech, AI, and design, I would say for women and others, find what you're really passionate in the area. And I think it's good to know your skills. So I'm actually taking a project management course to better myself in leadership management and how to manage my nonprofit, while also when I go back into a day job in the game industry, how I can manage those tasks better to help and be beneficial to the team. So when you're going to go into it, know the skills you want. It's okay to learn another skill to help you along, and just make sure you're really passionate what you go into. Because if you're not passionate about it, then what's the point of being in there? So that's just my 2 cents when you're going to go more into technology sectors.
I agree. And I would like to also ask, is there key characteristics, ladies, that you think are going to be a commonality amongst a certain characteristic type, a certain nature, certain things, skills that people will actually, this would be a beneficial industry potentially for them?
Project management is actually growing really popular for those that don't want to code into it. That's one thing I've noticed recently.
Is there like characteristics, personality characteristics that you can think of, Maria? Is there like you are a coder, right? Like you are. What are some of your key characteristics that maybe other women might also harbor?
Well, sometimes I joke and say that as an engineer, you need to be an introvert because you need to spend a lot of hours working on a problem. But yeah, but it's not really true. But you need to be comfortable spending a lot of time trying to find a solution for a problem. So I think it's a mix of being persistent and also being very driven by a given area, right? But Kelsey was saying that sometimes it's intimidating to be the only woman at some rooms, and it's true because that happened to me a lot as an engineer. But it's because we're talking more about the technical side, but there are a lot more positions on technology that we're not talking about. For example, in XR, we need designers, we need 3D designers, and we need other kind of positions that are not so technical, but are still needed, and you're still working in technology, but not just coding. So I think we need different kind of people, and there are a lot of positions that were not mentioned here. And it's not just being able to code. So sometimes when people talk about, like Divya was talking about, that project of going and talking with young girls, I think it would be more beneficial to talk to them and not just focus on tech, because of course we're talking about technology, but we can just tell them, look, yes, you can be a coder or you can be an engineer and you can really build the product, but there are a lot of other things you can do, and you're still working on technology and you're still supporting projects in technology.
Thank you. Okay, let's go for another question, shall we? Okay. Next question. Can you share your experience in seeking funding for startup and challenges faced? I would like to share a couple from the startups that we're working with, and to tie this question with the previous one about women in technology. And I agree, we need women in every single industry and sector. But what I would like to share with you is that I've been working with a couple of different startups where women are founders. And so one of them is technology in magnetic levitation in transportation. The second one is technology in underground supply chain. And the third one is, and these three are very interesting, the technology used for its innovative
circular technology in maritime industry. The three of them, so just take a moment to think about what does it look like to build those startups and those businesses, and how their daily work look like. And then imagine how the pitch look like. It's really amazing. You just want to hear more information. And then at one point, I just wanted to compare and in my mind and see if we would hear the pitches of those three different startups comparing to a startup that is offering a space for co-working. Can you imagine the complexity of those three startups, and then when they pitch for the funding, comparing to something that is really basic, yet those three startups never actually, they're still struggling, trying to find a way how they can present that these ideas are something that is actually going to be very useful. This is a sustainability and sustainable technology that will be a must in the next 5 to 10 years, because what we always talk about, what I always talk about with the founders is that if you don't have a sustainability and technology integrated in the foundation, in the framework, in operation strategy, you won't be having clients and users in the next 5 to 10 years. And so that's something that experience that those female founders are going through is very challenging in order to make sure that they can convey the value of the business idea and the businesses that they're building, and then trying to overcome the challenges that they face every day. So that's something that is very, very interesting that I have been, that I'm seeing every day.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to add on this one? Kelsey?
I would
Yeah,
start in the who wants to go? You can go next.
Sorcha.
No, Kelsey, carry on. I can social media afterwards.
I would since I am more at the beginning of the stages, it is still a little bit difficult funding. But one of the things that I know is we had to pivot into Twitch streaming with the nonprofit, because you go into normal route of doing social media posts like, hey, donate to Zeffy.com or to PayPal, wasn't really getting enough traction. So one of the things we did was Twitch streaming. And that way it was a casual invitation for audience of all kind to come meet us and see what the nonprofit does, while talking to the co-founders and knowing what the mission is. So we found a little bit of funding that way. And as a nonprofit, we don't have normal investors. So a nonprofit investor is someone who would probably be investing normally in larger sums, from what I can tell, over a few years. But to me, I also can see it if you donate $1 a month towards a cause, that means you really want to see this cause. Well, donors, on the other hand, could be a one-time donor. I bet everyone has donated money to maybe a school or to someone's function, but you didn't really invest into the mission and say, oh, I hope, Girl Scout cookies did really great this year, and I hope they did their mission this. But normally we just buy the Girl Scout cookies. We don't go further. So that's what a donor would be versus an investor with us. So, but the challenges again is we're all trying to seek funding for a nonprofit. People just need to know your mission. And I think the hardest part is, can you find investors or donors that believe in the mission? So that's been the challenge enough, is once people kind of know the mission, they're like, oh, this is great. But not many people know if they can believe it or not. And I think that's the hardest part, whether nonprofit or just regular startup, is, do you believe in what we're trying to do with our company and what we want to succeed with it? And then once you get people on board, it would help.
Thank you, Kelsey. Yeah. Thank you. And Sorcha, we're going to let you wrap up. We're going to call it a wrap on this section of our summit. And ladies, I'm so grateful for all of you and your knowledge and your skills. Sorcha?
Thank you. Well, the last thing that I would just add to what Kelsey said is that do your research, choose your investors, do not spray and pray. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of your brand. You're diluting your value. Search for investors that you think that you want to work with, because bear in mind, you're going to be working with them very closely under a lot of pressure for at least 5 years. So you want to get to know them and make sure that they know you and what you're about and that you're aligned, because 1 year into the journey, is very difficult if those values are not aligned. Also, have multiple options available to you. Don't just think that you have to go for VC, angel investors, cash prizes from competitions, accelerators. There's lots of options out there, and just spend time researching where you can get quick cash that way while you're building relationships with VCs who you want to form a strategic relationship with. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.